Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Your Competitive Edge from Baird Warner. I'm Lauren Walker. I'm Senior Director of Strategy here at Inman. And today I get to sit down with Jeff Oman. Jeff is out of Baird Warner in Cary, Illinois. Thank you so much for being here, Jeff.
Oh, Lauren, thanks a lot for having me. This is great.
Yeah, this is going to be exciting because last week we talked with Heidi Rogers, and Heidi outlined how agents can pivot into working from working with homeowners to working with investors. And so now you're here and you're going to take us one step further in kind of an exciting way about how agents can actually be the investors. Is that right?
Yep, that's I think what our main topic of conversation is.
That,
So it's obviously a really good question for a lot of people, and I think the simple answer on why somebody in the real estate industry should become an investor is because we're always told to invest in what we know, right? So I didn't get into real estate to become an investor, but as I was working real estate and gained experience and knowledge, it just made sense. It was a logical segue into the business.
Sure.
I had good exposure to not only the information, but all of the data and all of the people and all the contacts. It was just a really logical transition for me, as well as many other agents.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So Heidi said something that I want to throw at you and see what you have to say. She said that investors are loyal to the deal. How does that work when you're the investor?
So as the investor yourself, you're only looking at the deal. You're only looking at the numbers. And what I think she's referring to there is the connection to the real estate agent isn't necessarily as strong, right? So especially if you're dealing with somebody who's looking to flip a house, one of my first flip clients, they were talking to 4 or 5 agents at the same time.
Wow.
And it was like whoever brought me the best deal was going to be the one I was going to ink. I quickly realized that I had a leg up because I was an investor. I was able to start to talk to them about business and about the opportunities and the what would I do scenario. And it resonated a lot more because I had personal background in being an investor, so we could talk on the same level.
That's really interesting. So you're coming from a place of expertise in order to provide better value to your client, essentially.
Very true.
Yeah.
Very true. I mean, it always resonates better with someone when you can actually say, hey, I've done this and this is what I would do versus like, well, I read about it and I think this is what we should do.
Absolutely. All right. Well, take us through the very first time you invested. What was that like? What was the experience like?
So as most agents, I did something before I got into real estate, right? I was in the corporate world for 15 years. I became a real estate agent in 2011. And my focus there was nothing to do with investing. I was going to build a business. I was going to farm my community. It was 411 homes. And my whole experience in the business world was very analytical. So I came up with a marketing plan that geared towards analytics, talked to sales, talked to all the numbers that are going on in that specific neighborhood. So I became very intimately knowledgeable about what was going on there, house by house. After about a year of doing this, one of the first foreclosures popped up, and this was early 2012.
Right.
And I looked at it, and I was like, wow, there's a lot of value in here. There's probably $100,000 worth of hidden value. So I went home that day and had a discussion with my wife, and I said, I think we need to buy this house. And she looked at me like, what are you talking about? Like, we're not going to move. This is 2012, right? Housing prices are not doing that great. My business is just getting off the ground. Her business is doing what it's needing to be doing. So it didn't make a whole lot of sense until I started to explain to her what was going on. I had that knowledge and the understanding of, hey, this is what this home should be priced at. It's a foreclosure. This is happening to it. There's a big opportunity here. And it's something that would be pretty fun to do. And so we ultimately wrote an offer. It got competitive, wrote $11,000 over list, knowing what was still in the bank there. Worked with a contractor, put it on the market, sold it 6 months later for a very substantial profit. And that was the first of probably 6 houses in that subdivision, as well as multiple homes either to flip or to hold and collect rents from up and down the Northwest Corridor.
Wow. So that was a successful outing. So it gave you a taste for more, I assume.
Definitely. I mean, it's a different story if you walk out and you made $5, but it was
right.
It was one of those things where, wow, okay, this really worked pretty well. Let's see what we can do again.
Sure. So what would you say? I wish I knew this when I was doing that when you first started. What do you wish you knew?
So there are two different things there. One would be, I wish I knew all of the ins and outs about construction,
Mm,
because like my knowledge base was the asset, right? So I could tell you what the asset's going to do, but I had no idea what all the construction costs were going to be or what variables there were, because in remodeling you can, spend money all day long. I didn't look at some of the mechanical things in the houses, like air conditioner, right? So, and then when you realize what you're trying to put out there in the marketplace, it's like, all right, I need to have something of such a level that it meets the standard of the neighborhood and it gives me a good name brand. So I ended up spending more money there than I wanted to in my first transaction, but that's okay. It was so lucrative that it didn't really matter. I'd say the other thing I'd love to know, which became part of my business practice, was understanding the limitations of each property, right? So this particular property back to a busy road. And being the agent there for a while, I started to understand that 1 out of 3 buyers wouldn't even come look at it, no matter how beautiful it was. And they would see all the pictures, they'd say everything's great, but then I'd call the agent and say, hey, I know you've got a client looking at this. And they're like, oh yeah, but it backs to Lake Cook Road, so I'm not interested. And I was like, all right, note to self, that becomes a real problem to be able to sell a property. Let's go ahead and eliminate that from the business plan.
gotcha. All right. So you can't become an expert on everything. So what have you done since then to address the fact that you were not an expert in construction? How have you augmented your plan going forward as an investor?
So my first couple of partnerships were with general contractors, and one in specific. So I learned a lot of the ropes from them. And then as I became more important to their business, we ended up working out different financial terms, which made it much more lucrative for both of us.
Hmm.
I could use his labor resources on the weekends, or when he was off a job, he could send them my way, because my timelines were pretty detailed, but I didn't have to be done in 4 weeks like you see on the TV shows. There was a little bit of flexibility there. So, and then just being around the job sites and understanding what's going on. You have to remember, that's not my main focus. My main
Right.
focus is selling houses. So you can't be an expert at everything,
Mhm.
but just over time, the more exposure you have to it, the more intellectual, the more advanced you get at what you're doing.
Sure. That makes a lot of sense. So talk a little bit more about, this is your job to sell homes. How does being an investor help you sell homes?
So it actually helps you sell in two different ways. You have to look at it from a investor point of view
Hmm.
for clients, as well as residential point of view. Investors first, and we kind of touched on that.
Yeah.
An individual investor, there's usually two types. There are ones that love to do buy and hold, and then there are ones that like to flip. The buy and hold ones, they're the ones that will become most loyal to you, mainly because you have to manage their properties. They're
Mm.
buying them, they're renting them, and they're going to continuously buy more and more units. So I know a couple of agents that work exclusively with buy and hold investors, and 40-50% of their business can be a couple of clients because they're constantly churning dollars. Um, they'll look to you as an investor. Once again, you're looking at this exact same metrics. How do I make a profit? What are the downfalls here? So you're able to talk shop with them and really lock in. For a flipper, it is much more about, hey, what would you do here? What would you do there? How are we going to get the most bang for the buck?
Yeah.
That information actually translates really good to a residential client. A residential client, if they've seen you flipping houses before, they know you know what you're talking about to the level of coming out of your pocket.
Mm.
So a lot of agents will walk into a house, paint colors, you can definitely decide what you need to do there. But when it comes to fixtures and it comes to other minor improvements, the question is, where are you going to get most bang for the buck?
Yeah.
I can speak to it firsthand, literally firsthand, because I've gone in and made a $500 light fixture or a $2,000 light fixture and seen what the difference is. There are some really small bells and whistles that I've picked up on that a lot of people haven't, and they're great to be able to share with a client for next to no cost. A great example of that is what I like to call jewelry. If you go into a kitchen, one of the things that people focus on is the hardware.
Yes.
It's just, little cabinet hardware. Now you could spend $2 on it or $10 on it. Your overall spend might be $500, but if it gives the illusion of something looking a lot nicer, it's definitely worth it. So it's some of those insights that I can impart on a residential client that most others can't, and it really did help propel my business.
Sure. That's great insight. Thank you for sharing that tip. I wasn't sure if you were going to give us the inside scoop. So we're in a very interesting market right now, Jeff. You know, we're in the middle of the COVID-19 outbreak. And so the markets have taken the full impact of that. So what would you say to an agent who's thinking, okay, I need to shift something in my business model? Is now a good time for that, in your opinion?
There's always a good time to invest, but investing in real estate is just like investing in your real estate business. You have to develop a plan and execute the plan. So, like I said, when I got into the real estate business, I was like, this is my analytical nature. This is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to market myself. It's the same thing if you want to invest. You have to set your criteria beforehand and really kind of evaluate it. What is your game plan? It is probably very beneficial to talk to somebody else. I didn't do that. I kind of jumped in with both feet, not really knowing what the outcome was, but I was in a perfect market environment,
Mm,
right? So 2012, the prices were low. There were a ton of foreclosures and short sales out there. So there was a lot of room for error. In a market like this right now, where the prices aren't really moving one direction or the other, there's not as much room for error. So you have to be a little more careful about what you're doing. But once again, using your metrics and understanding, okay, do I want to buy a house that backs to a road? Do I, what are the rents in this particular marketplace? And is it going to hold up based on the fact that, a large corporation is down the street and 20% of the people work at that corporation and they may downsize? Those are the things that you'd want to look at as an investor right now to see if you wanted to jump in.
that makes a lot of sense. And of course, you're in the Chicago area, so all of this is very market specific, you know.
Yes, exactly. And that's where I've talked to other friends over the years. Like when I got into real estate investing, friends from college and high school out on the West Coast would call me and say, "Hey, I'd like to do this, I'd like to do that." And I'm like, I can't really help you. I don't know that market. I mean, it's really, other than the fact that prices are going up, I can't tell you what's going to happen there because I have no exposure to it.
Sure, sure. Well, you're very data driven, and so that
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense. So you're with Baird and Warner. So how has Baird and Warner helped you adapt this business with investing and residential? What is it about the culture? What is it about the infrastructure that has been beneficial for you?
So interestingly enough, Baird Warner's company culture is very collaborative. So, and that's different than some of the other real estate organizations out there. The branch managers or non-selling managers, they really work on focusing on camaraderie and teamwork. And as somebody that's going in to make improvements, I'd like to get as much information as possible. So I could go into the office, talk to 10, 15 agents, even leave samples out and say, hey, which one of these would your clients figure out that they would like better? Or which one do you prefer? And there was never really a hesitation in my office to share the information, so which was great. Or if I was looking at a rental property, I could go to 3 or 4 agents that work those communities and say, hey, A, do you have anybody looking to rent? And B, if you're talking to people to rent, what are they looking to spend? What are they, what's their budget? So the collaborative effort that happens in a Baird Warner office is fantastic, and that really did help propel some of my investment decisions.
Wow, that's really powerful. So let's wrap it up for people. We've kind of touched on all these different aspects of how to get into it, but at the end of the day, what I really respect about what you're doing is that you're going into investing as a way to be a better residential real estate agent. Um, Say a little bit more about that.
So yeah, I think the two really complement each other. It never hurts to have an extra income stream, right?
Yeah,
So there is a financial benefit to it as well. But all of the information that I've realized over my time as an investor is always being imparted back to my residential clients. And that's actually one of the things I'd always talk to in my marketing presentation. It's like, I'm a day-to-day investor in the real estate market. I bleed this stuff. So if I'm telling you something that needs to happen, chances are it's because I've already been exposed to it. I'm trying to save you from that pain. So it really, as long as that connection was made, it really resonated well with my residential clients because they could see what I was doing and where I was coming from.
fantastic. That's great. It's coming from a place of expertise and turning it into a way to be of service.
Yep,
That's
exactly. And that's what
powerful.
all your clients are always looking for.
Absolutely, they are. Well, thank you so much, Jeff. This was really educational and really helpful. So thank you very much for your time.
All right. No, I appreciate it, Lauren. Thanks a lot.
Have a good one.